talk to the Lakers about, he and Rich Paul, his agent, into the next week. I know Rich Paul will talk to Rob Pelinka tonight. He's got KCP, who's also a free agent there. But you saw LeBron James do this in Cleveland when he was on those one-year deals, and you knew he was going back. Some of them extended several weeks, a few weeks. I don't know if ADs will go that long, but there's just going to be a window of time here before he decides or firmly commits to whatever contract structure they finally land on.
The other big sort of idea we're going to be talking about today and looking for is how these free agents or moves or trades are going to fit in with teams that have, look, they don't know what they're getting this coming year in terms of fans in the stands, revenue coming in. There's question marks about how much room there is available. Not a lot of teams have huge, gallons of cap space the way we've seen in some other years. How is that going to affect guys like Fred VanVleet or Serge Ibaka, who aren't those big, huge names like Kawhi Leonard last year, but who have won rings and could be a key ingredient to add to a championship mix on another team?
I think Fred VanVleet is very likely to return to Toronto. Maybe it hurts him in his negotiations as to what number he can get to with the Raptors on his extension versus if there were a lot of teams with cap space and he had a lot of, maybe some more viable options out there. But I think VanVleet returns to Toronto. But I think two of Toronto's free agents, Serge Ibaka, Marc Gasol, very much up in the air where they play. Those are two players who a lot of teams around the league want to talk to here in the next a couple days, and I think Toronto would like to keep as much of the group together as they can. And so, those will be some interesting questions. But I think you look around the league and you see players like, Joe Harris. I think Brooklyn will move here in the next couple days to try to get Harris locked up. And some players, who are key components to teams. Donovan Mitchell, Jason Tatum, both extension eligible. Those are very likely extensions that they'll get done here, I think, sometime in the next few days.
Yeah, well, we know that a lot of these moves set up the moves that create a trade to get a big-name player in a week or two, so we're going to be watching all of them for sure. Woj, I know how busy you are right now. Thank you so much for taking a minute out. We will say goodbye, but please come back if news breaks. We'll look for you through the rest of the show. Muted Brian from the smoke machine just a little bit, but there you go. I want to ask you guys about Anthony Davis because he can sign that long-term extension we've been talking about with the Lakers. All roads, of course, lead to him staying in LA. He does have some choices, and as you heard Woj say in our last block, he's not expected to commit in the immediate days. Brian, can you explain a little bit about what's going on here to our audience, what his options are, and is there any point they should start getting nervous?
Well, there's some speculation out there, Rachel, that one of the reasons why he's going to delay his decision is because the Lakers have some other free agency moves to make, and he just wants to let them know he's watching. Now, I don't think there's any stress out there. He will be a Laker, but one of the guys they have to make a decision on, and it's a tough decision about how much to pay him, is Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, who is represented by the same agent, Rich Paul. Now, I think Caldwell-Pope is going to have some interest out there in the market. Whether or not he can get enough money out there to actually leave the Lakers is a different story. But this is somewhat reminiscent of when J.R. Smith was a free agent back in 2016 in Cleveland, represented by Rich Paul, and LeBron took his sweet time over that summer before signing. Now, having said that, LeBron did sign before J.R. Smith did. But while I think Anthony Davis has been well aware of his contracts options for months now, maybe it's just a little bit of a check game that he's playing.
Paul, if you were Anthony Davis, would you commit 2 years plus a player option, do the 1-and-1, where you're only committing for another year? We've seen that be a strain on teams, like when Kevin Durant kept doing the 1-and-1s and the 1-and-1s that just brought all these questions about whether he was really going to stay. Or do you want to keep your flexibility if you're Anthony Davis?
I think it's important for the players these days to keep their flexibility. I would line my contract up directly with LeBron's because, as you can see, he can sign for 35% of the cap after that 10 years. And so, LeBron, he could probably retire in 2-3 years. Who knows? But I'll line my situation up with his. But what Anthony Davis got to understand is you're a Laker, you won a championship. Now, if you decide after 2 years you don't want to be a Laker or 3 years you don't want to be a Laker, it's like, to me, where do you go from there? And so I really would start thinking long term. I would think even for a 5 or 6 year deal. I mean, because after you might win another championship as a Laker. There's nowhere else you can go after being a Laker after winning 2 championships and being the face of the franchise long after LeBron has left. So, I mean, his options are open, and that's a good thing to have these type of options for Anthony Davis to make these type of decisions, because he's one of those players whose game is injury-proof also. He's 7 feet, athletic. He can do so many things with the ball. He can shoot, soft touch, handle the ball. So sky's the limit for this kid. Whether he stays healthy or not, he's still going to get a great deal. So maybe 2 is the way to go.
I like what you're saying, Paul, and I agree. He really has some flexibility. I think lining his contract up with LeBron is a great thing to do. Win as much as possible. And then down the line, obviously, you could do the 1-and-1s back at home. I know that was talked about. I think Chicago, a couple other teams where he could possibly go back. He could do his 1-and-1s then. But right now, you want to win as much as possible. And he can make a lot of money on a very good team with the chance to win another championship back-to-back possibly. So I think right now, I don't walk away from that opportunity. I mean, I think, at the end of the day, he's going to be a Laker. And they're just giving all these, just doing, like you said, playing the game a little bit. Yeah, I know I'm signing there. I'll sign later, just for the drama,
What's life without a little bit of drama? And by the way, Paul, I know that you have your number retired in Boston. Right, exactly. I know, Paul, you have your number retired in Boston Garden, but you're clearly always an LA kid if you're saying, what could you possibly want besides playing for the Lakers? I mean, that there's not even a consideration of another team. That's the most LA thing I think I've heard you say in a while.
I do want to move on to the Sixers, after basketball anyway.
Yes, for sure. And here's president of basketball operations, Rob Pelinka, just got his own deal done for Dennis Schroeder, and he spoke about that trade and more in his media availability yesterday. Here is what he said about the Schroeder deal. Quote, he has been a player we pursued not just in this trade deadline, but before. We pursued him aggressively. I think it's easy to fall into complacency when you win a title and just say, hey, let's run it back. But at the same time, I think my school of thinking is always, let's find ways we can become even better. Every offseason, let's get better. And Ramona, this is such an important idea because, yes, you are, quote, running it back. But even with your roster, everyone gets a year older. So that idea of just run it back is never exactly right. LeBron James is turning 36 next month. What kind of turnover can we expect on this roster entering next season?
Well, look, the Lakers have the problem of championship, which is you have to now pay the championship premium. Everybody wants their pound, right? They want their bag of cash. I feel bad for the Lakers in some sense that they didn't get that playoff money. They didn't get that gate money of all the fans attending Staples Center. So usually all the luxury tax you have to pay back to your players when they want to get paid for all their contributions, you don't feel so bad about it. Now, don't feel too bad for them. They still make a lot of money on their cable TV deal. But they've got to pony up a lot of money to keep Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. Okay, they're going to have to pay. They're going to have to pay Avery Bradley, who opted out of his last year. I'm told he wants to stay in LA. He has other offers, but if they offer him a 2-year deal, he would be inclined to stay. Like, in other words, the Lakers have first dibs on him. But a lot of other teams, Golden State, Milwaukee, Charlotte, have interest in him. Dwight Howard is another guy they need to bring back. JaVale McGee opted into his contract. That's $4 million. So if they can keep him there, that's good for them, or they can use him in trades. But essentially for the Lakers, Rachel, they have to keep all their guys, pay a lot more money for the same guys they got at a discount last year, and then they have to go and try to find new pieces that make them better. So they did that with Schroeder, and I think they have. They'd like to upgrade again at center, either by bringing back Dwight Howard and JaVale, or some of the other centers on the market. Marc Gasol is the name I've heard. Serge Ibaka, obviously. And they need to replace Danny Green. It's a lot of defense and shooting you just lost.
Well, we all know the cost of winning costs money. I mean, I mean, I remember a key player for us, James Posey. We won the championship, and the next year he wanted more money, and we didn't keep him. And I really think that really cost us in the long run, not paying the extra dollars to keep the team together like that. And that's what you're going to see with the Lakers. Although I do think they did upgrade by getting Schroeder. Doesn't have the championship experience of Rajon Rondo, but he is a guy who was a key component to OKC this year, going as far as they went and pushing Houston on the brink of elimination. You know, he's a guy who can score the ball a little bit better. He's another ball handler and decision maker that can take pressure off of Bron. And so that's a key pickup for them in trade for Dennis Schroeder. So, and we'll have to see how these other pieces fall in place for the Lakers. But that's a great start right there.
Yeah, I agree. Obviously, AD is number one to handle that, which we know that they will. But bringing in Schroeder, I think, you know, speed, quickness. You bring in a younger guy who has some playoff experience. Like you said, he does not have Rondo's experience, but at the same time, he's a guy that you can implement into your offense. You can put the ball in his hand, and he can get a bucket. He can make plays. He has a huge impact on the defensive end as well. So, like I said, it's a great start. And bringing in Dwight Howard or finding a center like that, I like a Marc Gasol in there as well. I mean, somebody you can play through and to move the ball and make plays and defensively, or a Serge Ibaka. So I think a great start with Schroeder.
Yeah, Rachel, Rob Pelinka's got a tough job. I know he says the enemy of winning is complacency, but it's more than that. It's not just complacency, because they don't even have that luxury. When you look at Dwight Howard, Avery Bradley opted out. KCP opted out, Rondo, and there's a fifth one. Danny Green is gone, and Markieff Morris. So you've got all these guys who were key contributors for a championship campaign, whether they did it early in the playoffs, late in the playoffs, in the regular season. These guys were all key contributors for this Lakers team. They all could be gone, right? You talk about Dwight Howard was here on a non-guaranteed minimum. He did his job. Now it's time for him to go back and cash out again. So the reality is, even if they wanted to be complacent, they can't. But I like some of the deals that Vince and Paul and Ramona are talking about. I love the idea of Ibaka there, or Gasol. Bogdanovic, if they can get him, that's a huge upgrade in terms of someone who's another ball creator, ball handler, and play creator. And that's the other thing about Schroeder, going back to that point. What the Lakers were missing or were looking for at some point in the season was that kind of guy. That's why J.R. Smith was a Laker. That's why Dion Waiters was a Laker, right? Ultimately, it turned out they didn't really need it. They had enough to win a championship. But they knew that was an area of concern that they needed to upgrade in. And Schroeder gives them that. Gives them someone who doesn't need LeBron to create his offense for him. And I think that's going to help him.
Look, I mean, you're talking about two-time NBA champion J.R. Smith there when you talk about him. Come on. Look, I love the Schroeder pickup. He's feisty. you.